So let's talk Bruce real quick. Obviously, he's immortalized. What was Bruce like, though, as a human being? Like, what was like the funniest thing he said on the set, and what were the conversations like between you and him? Like, just over the craft service table. Was there even a craft service table?
Not often. Not often. Bring your own apple.
Not on a Fred Weintraub show.
Yeah, we were talking. Well, just give you an example. Enter the Dragon budget, the highest martial arts film budget, was $850,000. Bruce got $300. Lalo Schifrin got $150. So guess what was left for the rest of the film?
Wow.
So there was no craft services. But what was Bruce like? I do seminars all over the world. In fact, I just came back from Trinidad and Canada. And I love doing the seminars primarily because he was a great man, like Chuck Norris. He was very kind. He was very smart. He was a bit of a smart ass. You know, he'd say, I don't like guys with bleach blonde hair. I don't like Mexicans with mustache or whatever you had. And then if you came back and said, well, I don't like short Chinamen, he loved you. He just cracked up. But some people, when he'd say that, you know, I like long hair and beards, you know, whatever. Yeah. But if you reacted to him, then he was just so fun and funny. And he was kind. You know, he was a magician, which people don't know. And so any kids came around, he liked to put quarters and get them out of their ear and that kind of thing. So he was just really a terrific guy to be around.
That's the Bruce Lee estate calling you now.
Probably.
Plug the new poster with the nunchucks.
Yeah. So he was fun. He was a lot of fun. And he was so bright, very well read. If you wanted to do Bruce Lee a favor, you bought him a book, a martial arts book. And he didn't care if it was from India or any place else. He didn't care if he could read it. He just wanted to look at the pictures.
Did you know what you were getting into when you started working with him? Was he already established as a sort of a on the flight path type legend, or was it like one of those things where you're in the trenches and it's new and you don't know where this is going to go?
I actually met him because my second black belt came from the great Gene LaBelle, as you all know, go-kart instructor and my instructor.
Yeah, Gokar was, love Gokar.
Gokar, he's another case we could get onto for a week.
The strongest man behind the Iron Curtain.
Awesome guy. But, I was Gene LaBelle's fifth black belt from way back. And so Gene always said, go train with everybody. Everybody's got something good. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, film. You want to go and work with different directors and different people who have different ideas. And so I went to see a kung fu demonstration with a guy named Bob Osman, who was, for martial arts, a big guy. He was 6'2", 230. Most martial artists in my day were little. Mm. And they weren't your size. A guy your size could fall on somebody and hurt him.
I'm trying to trim it down.
Ethan calls that a Tuesday.
But I met him at a kung fu demonstration. And in those days, martial artists, pretty much in the 50s and the 60s, they knocked each other. So if you were judo and I was Shotokan and he was taekwondo and he was Shorin-ryu, everybody was crap except my system. My system was the best. And Gene LaBelle, the world's toughest man, who's never lost a professional fight, he started MMA, choked out Milo Savage, a rated boxer in 1962. And he was just a real gentleman, gentle guy, but he said, everybody's got something good. So I went to this kung fu demonstration, and there was about 6 Guilo, us, and the rest Chinese. And the guy was nasty, and he said, oh, I see we have karate people here. So he literally spit on the stage. And so right away I didn't like him. And then he said, I'll show you how much better kung fu is in karate. I invite these karate people up to hit me as hard as they want. So 3 guys went up on the stage, because there were 6 guys there. They were probably karate people. I didn't know them. But they went up there, and he put his arm out. So they shoot-toed him in the arm, and I go, you're not going to hurt anybody shoot-toeing him in the arm, maybe the neck, So anyway, then he said, okay, put your arm out and I'll break it, and I'll show you the difference in kung fu. Well, they didn't buy into that, so they got off the stage. So I'm looking at this guy, and I'm going, hey, break my arm. So I go up there and stick my arm out, and he whacks it 3 or 4 times, but he was pretty clever. He was whacking it with the back of his fingers across my wrist. And then after 6 or 8 times, it was stinging, but I kept saying, when are you going to break my arm? Break my arm. So I slapped him. And I have these freaky long arms. You've got to be 6'5" to have arms like I do. So I just reached out and slapped him, and he spun around and fell down and pretended like he was unconscious. So then I realized that I had my bourbon and soda in my left hand. I hadn't put it down because I was just being cocky. Right? So then I'm standing there. I need a comedic routine because I'm looking at 200 Chinese faces and 5 Guilos, and I go, oh, I probably just got myself killed. So I start getting off the stage, and Bob Osman says, let's get out of here now with clenched teeth. They're going to kill us. Okay. And so I start walking towards the door, and I see this guy walking up. He's a tougher-looking guy, and And I said, well, I'll knock him out first. So I'm looking around, and the guy sticks his hand out. He says, hey, I'm Bruce Lee. That's the funniest thing I've ever seen. That's
Oh,
how I met him.
nice.
That's how I met him. He said, I want to do exactly what you did. You're as cocky as me. But I'm a Kung Fu man. And he kept saying Kung Fu was the best, so I couldn't do what you did. But anyway, we stayed outside and talked, and that's how we met.
Your road to redemption is paved with tombstones. No quarter, kill all masters. Go to noquarterkillallmasters.com. Rated R.
Now, was Bruce open to people like you coming up with ideas within the fight itself? I mean, we've worked with different people who said, this is the way I want to do it, this is the way I want to look, here's where the camera should be. Well, was Bruce like pretty open-minded about anything you would approach him with?
Yeah, he as far as training with him, as far as martial arts, he was wide open. Mm-hmm. And so when I introduced him to Gene LaBelle, he was wide open. And if you look at Game of Death, he's choking out Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's doing all stuff that Gene and Hayward Nishioka taught him. And but as far as his fight scenes on the set, he had it in his head. He had an imprint and knew what he wanted, and you could suggest all you want, and it was just going out the window. Mm-hmm. But training with him was a different story. He was a lot of fun to be around.
Was he?
Yeah.
What's the funniest thing Bruce Lee ever said to you?
Oh my God, there were so many things.
What's it like racing down the streets of Hong Kong with Bruce
It's
Lee
so
riding
amazing.
shotgun?
Can I just
First of all-
Can I just step in here for a
Sure.
second? I am so thrilled to be hearing these stories, Bob. I just can't believe I'm here for this. Thank you so much for coming. I just
Well, you just don't. I'm sure you understand, but you just don't understand. A guy like me grew up on these movies, and I trained in Taekwondo, and being a part of martial arts defined who I was. I didn't drink because I was training. Then I had a drink, and I was like, "What is this amazing
Why am I training?
elixir?" Yeah. But
Why am I training so hard?
I grew up in the '70s where you couldn't see these movies like on Netflix. Game of Death came out in '73. I probably saw it in '78, and I had to go downtown Houston to like a an urban theater because that's the only. But you didn't get to see movies over and over when you were a kid because they would have to re-release them. There was no mechanism. VHS wasn't even out yet.
You know what I think for that was Black Belt Theater. They,
we didn't have Black Belt Theater.
Kung Fu Theater. On Saturday
Yeah,
afternoons.
there was Kung Fu
See,
Theater.
we didn't have that.
They ran all those Shaw Brothers films or those Bruce Lee films, and I don't think any of us would have seen them if it wasn't for that little program. They probably didn't even know the world they were creating, or maybe they did. But I thought that was genius. And,
They call them chop-socky movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also particularly movies like Avenging the Eagle. They had great stories. A lot of them. They were all about vengeance and code. But
people just don't realize what people now. Bruce Lee is just a fact. They just don't realize what he did in terms of like bringing even the Shaw Brothers movies and even all of those kind of period character things. There were a lot of terrific actors and stuff, but it's like the difference between Elvis and just something about he instantly solidified this look and this attitude, and it was the most amazing thing. There were guys who could fight, but to have that physique, to be that guy,
I got charisma.
Blew
That's the real
mind.
key. He had charisma.
Yeah.
well, actually, just going through Fists of Fury. I mean, that's a masterpiece.
I still got the stickers at home from the screening. Yeah.
Especially when he's like fighting the guy and he's got like the nunchuck slightly bent.
Yeah.
You can't help but watch.
Look, I have
Even
to say,
comic moments.
that one of my favorite fight scenes of all time is you in the locker room in Game of Death. And what was the guy? Was Tong Lung? Was that who was doubling Bruce for the?
There were three guys.
That's a big fight scene. I remember that.
It's just the most. It's fucking awesome.
Wow.
Well, that was fun for me because the main reason they brought me back, we had started, Danny Inosanto, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Bruce and I had started to do Game of Death. Mm-hmm. And then he had been fighting with Warner Brothers about the title. They wanted it to be Hans Island, Blood and Sand, and the million names that he had, and Bruce kept saying, no, Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
And because he was
Blood and Steel.
Little Dragon.
Yeah.
So on the set, he got a telegram finally from the chairman of Warner Brothers that said, okay, you win, it's Enter the Dragon. So we shut down. So we had some of those scenes, but the whole story idea was totally different than what was actually filmed. Bruce's idea was it was Hercules remade, so it was a 7-story building. And the toughest guy of all, Kareem, was up in the top floor. And so each level had a tougher guy and a different martial artist. But anyway, so we shot that scene, and some of that actually has Bruce in it, if you look at that locker room scene. But I love to go back and shoot that, because it was the first time I got to do it without Bruce. That was a challenge, because when you had Bruce, you had a genius, and it was just going to turn out. When you asked me a question about funniest thing, always on the set, because Bruce was a perfectionist, he'd always shoot things 5, 6 times. And so our little inside joke, because I perfected how to take punches and kicks. I don't anybody punch me or kick me. And I said, you play with the teeth and the nose, otherwise I'm going to hit you back and you won't like it, trust me. But he would always say, well, I'm going to break something. You little Chinaman, you can't break anything. But being with him, he was the greatest martial artist, the worst driver. So you'd be driving with him, and he'd be like this, and you'd be going. So when Linda called to say he'd passed away, I said, car accident. I just knew it right away. Best martial artist, worst driver. Yeah. But no, he was just, everything he said was funny, because like I said, he liked to pick on you. You know, he'd pick on your size, or he'd pick on your hairstyle, or he'd just pick on something just to get you rolling.